Okay, so originally this video was going to be like every other content creator's rant video on the newest Deadly Assault update, which included Vesper. However, I decided against that and wanted to wait until Aria's release and better collect my thoughts on Deadly Assault as a whole. Things I like alongside the issues that have been plaguing the mode since version 2.0. But for those of you who already beaten this Deadly Assault rotation before Aria's release, my condolences. I know some of you lost years off your lifespan from the trials and tribulations, and for those of you who haven't played it yet, good luck. You can either skip it and save your sanity, or just one and done and never look back no matter what score you achieve. Since this is easily the worst Deadly Assault rotation I've had the pleasure to experience, and I just wanted to do a community discussion on how people felt, since rather than just come here and rant, I want to offer constructive criticism so they don't release bosses in this fashion in the future. So where do we even begin? I think the first and foremost most blatant issue is the speed at which Deadly Assault HP has been getting increased proportionate to the increase in power that the average player experiences in Zenless Zone 0. Now, some players did expect a huge HP jump to happen once they included this material, the Resonating Core. It's almost like a Pandora box at this point, since the same issue took place in Honkai Star Rail. Once players begin to get more and more access to optimal gear, it seems Hoyoverse considered it's a good time to inflate the difficulty of getting clears drastically. Which from their point of view, it's understandable. If the content is too easy and everyone can clear it, it loses the prestige and players get bored since there's nothing to strive for. But maintaining a healthy balance between the two is key. Personally, I don't really have a fix for this, since it's something that all gacha games experience. Numbers only go up, but we cannot avoid mentioning it since it's slightly part of the issue. If this was the only issue, however, I think things would have been fine. But let's talk about the stuff that is fixable. First, it's character shilling. We all know how the system works. They put a wall in front of the players that we must climb over. However, in this case, Hoyoverse forgot to deliver the package on time, aka the ladder, and players were forced to climb this wall with their bare hands for a few days. In other words, this boss has heavy favoritism towards the newest unit, Aria, who caked walls this fight, but releasing the fight prior to the newest character's release is a punch in the balls. However, what I think is the bigger issue is how the fight is also structured around the newer abilities, mainly Ether Veil and a Bloom. And yes, I know, Hoyoverse always shows new units with the boss fights. Look at Miyabi and Bringer, Xuan and Miasmic Priest, and even in Honkai Star Rail, Castorus and Pollux. But when this boss released, there were a total of 4 agents who had access to Ether Veil: Sunna, Zhao, Xuan, and Lucia, of which only one character here has their core passive activated by Anomaly agents, which is Zhao, who many players pair together with Xuan since that's her optimal team. The fact that they locked a very strong passive buff, Sonic Resonance, which stacks and will increase the Anomaly build-up rate and Anomaly damage, but it's only acquired by Ether Veil, means it locks Anomaly behind a skill that it's practically impossible for most Anomaly teams to have access to, which is what makes this fight so troublesome for players when in reality, it would have been pretty easy if we had access to that buff. In the future, they need to make sure newer abilities such as Ether Veil are also given to at least one older unit who fits the team of either Attack, Rupture, or Anomaly, and in fact, they had the chance when they gave out potentials to Lycon, Grace, and Bernice, none of which got Ether Veil, but some did receive a Bloom. Another thing with Ether Veil is the most recent Deadly Assault buffs, of which we can pick from one of 3, but let's look at Shattered Boon. Second activation condition, because I only noticed this when I planned on running Soldier Zero Ambi against Defiler, but realized I was missing out on this part since neither her or Trigger can give Ether Veil. So it states, while within Ether Veil, agents attack increase by 10% and attacks ignore 15% of the enemy's defense. My Ambi sure would have loved that, but nope, can't have it. And funny thing is they expected you to run Ambi or Haramasa since they gave electric damage buff, but the Ether Veil portion makes it so that they're only getting half of the effects. And If you are to use Aether Veil and Defiler, that would require 2 different teams with Aether Veil since both Vesper and Defiler need it, which is why older units need to get this ability. Like, how about Caesar King, who has been a dead unit since version 1.4, or Coletta, who has never even been alive at this point. I cannot believe they buffed Lycon before her, when he has been decent for a good portion of the game's lifespan thanks to Miyabi. But let's also talk about something I don't think many players notice, and that's how Anomaly bosses function. Anomaly bosses almost always have 2 different elemental weakness. The reason for this is because Anomaly team's focus is on Anomaly buildup, which is affected by the elemental weakness and resist that the boss has. Since version 1.1, Anomaly teams have been structured with the idea of 2 different elements applying Anomaly effects to create disorder effects which deal massive damage. Thus, you want the boss to have 2 weaknesses so both of these elements could have the fastest Anomaly buildup rate possible. It's why commonly you see premium Anomaly agents all have their core passive ability activated by another Anomaly agent. However, for Vesper, they are now going a different route, which is the traditional team setup. They no longer care for disorder application, rather they want Anomaly to function similar to attack agents where you force the boss into stun and unleash massive burst damage while the enemy is stunned. This also explains the Impair that Vesper has, as it's a great way to increase the stun gauge quickly. The issue is once again this hurts previously built teams, since it's a complete different approach to playing Anomaly, and wouldn't have been an issue if they didn't also delete 2 top tier Anomaly options. The obvious one is Miyabi, since giving the boss Ice Resist is just the typical developer haste he has been receiving since version 2.0, but the second is Bernice, who has become free for some players alongside her potential unlock. Kinda sucks since this would have been an easy clear had they been available. Also, fun fact, Angel of Delusion is actually 2 ether and 1 physical, so there's no excuse why there shouldn't have been a physical weakness, but they just wanted to make this fight much harder than it needed to be. Next, let's talk about the debuff, since this has been a thing as of recent in version 2.1, where they tell you which type of agents you want to use. For example, it states agents with Anomaly specialty. This has never been the case in earlier versions of Deadly Assault, since you could just run whoever you wanted and brute force a lot of the bosses, but now they actively screw you over if you try to experiment. Don't get me wrong, you can still brute force as I done with Yixing Wang and the super dedicated people who use Hugo and Nekomata. I see you diehards out there, but I just don't think giving a universal debuff with no counterplay is fun, and it could have been something as simple as removing the debuff if you hit a certain amount of impairs. This is more of a future issue since we will be getting more and more debuffs in the future, and having a way to have some sort of counterplay if you don't play the ideal units or simply don't want to run them is a much more healthy approach. Since I actually find this boss very fun overall, and I think it's a great fight, and I love how they're incorporating less reliance on the yellow light. It feels a lot more intuitive, and I love to see them make it an option where you can have a higher multiplier if you turn up the yellow and red lights, kind of like in Threshold Simulation when you clear with an extra team. This allows really low cost teams to clear if you have enough skill and knowledge. I just hope we never have the plague that is the intro to Thrall again. I never mentioned it in a video before, but that first 10 seconds of the fight needs to be deleted completely, or give an option to knock him out of the sky. While it's great for cinematics in a time-based game mode, remove it, please. Speaking of stalling, I actually don't mind the parries in Vesper. They aren't too long, and maybe it's because it's more interactive than something like Miasma Fiend. I'm okay with how it works. Also, kudos to whoever added the sound cue to the attack that cannot be parried by Vesper. I believe players mentioned this issue with the creator, and seeing them fix it in the next boss fight, it's great stuff to see. But overall, I think it's just multiple layers of issues all stacking on top of each other is what caused this experience to be so bad for so many players. Even myself, I wasn't able to do much more than 23k with my Anomaly team day 1, while Yixing Wang was able to do like 45 in Vesper, but I used her team to kill the Filer instead since Ambi's buff was neutered. Hopefully they take note of these issues and try not to repeat this in the future, but let me know, what was your experience with Deadly Assault this update? Was you able to clear it before Aria? Or did you wait for Aria's release to get the brain dead run? Or better yet, did this cause you to put the game down, since I know not everyone enjoys being stomped by bosses? I want to hear all the feedback in the comments down below, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and follow for more.